Good morning, Covenant Church family. We are so glad you and your family decided to join us this morning. We can't wait to reach out to the Father in worship and hear what God has to say through Pastor Mike. But before we get started, we have a couple of announcements we think you should know. First up, if you have kids, go ahead and take out your phone. All right, so unlock your phone and then go down to your calendar and click on December 15th. Go down to the 6 p.m. slot and type in "Take my kids to the Covenant Kids Christmas party called Party in a Major." That's all you have to do. Then of course, bring your kiddos that night. But this is a really great night that your kids will love. There's plenty of Christmas treats, games, and so much more. You can even think of this as a ministry opportunity to invite your neighbors who may have some kiddos, or this might be the only way you can get them into a church. So you definitely want to take your kids to this. Next, you can still keep your phones out for this one, because on Wednesday night, December the 15th, we are having a Christmas night of worship. We're getting into that season. You will not want to miss this. I really can't think of a better way for you and your family to spend a Wednesday night here with us worshiping. Can't wait to see you guys there. Lastly, the Covenant students are headed to the Winter Ramp Conference in Cleveland, Tennessee. The Ramp Conferences have always been a life-changing experience for our students. They are headed over to Tennessee from December 29th and will come back in the new year, January 1st. The rest of all the important information, like the address of the conference center they'll be at, the cost of the trip, and what to expect, are all on the app and the website. Parents, I will say from personal experience, I have been to one of these conferences before, and God is just really in that ministry and really in that room. So I would definitely encourage you. This is a great thing for your students, and I guarantee you they won't forget it.
You're beautiful. Your face is all I see. And when your eyes are on this child, your grace abounds to me. Your grace abounds to me. Oh Lord, you're beautiful. Your face is all I see. And when your eyes are on this child, your grace abounds to me. Your grace abounds to me. I wanna take your word and shine it all around. First help me just to live it, Lord. And when I'm doing well, help me to never seek a crown, for my reward is giving glory to you. I wanna take your word and shine it all around. First help me just to live it, Lord. And when I'm doing well, help me to never seek a crown, for my reward is giving glory to you. Oh Lord, please light the fire that once burned bright and clear. Replace the lamp of my first love that burns with holy fear. Oh Lord, you're beautiful. Your face is all I see. And when your eyes are on this child, your grace abounds to me. Your grace abounds to me.
Did you preach? Do not get in the way of this. I feel like we're supposed to preach too. So, man, you knew people were going, oh great, they're preaching after this? I thought that was church. All of it is church. All of it is church. There's a lot of aspects to it. And wow, man, that was so good. I got some healing today. I really wanted to get into that. I feel like God just touched and encouraged my heart this morning. Wow. Isn't he amazing? Yeah.
Yeah. Amen.
This is what it looks like to have revival. I mean, like really, it is. It's not going to always be able to. You can't just tie it up in a little bow and say, "Oh, here's what's going to look like every time," because it's not going to look like that. Sometimes when you're in the middle of a move with God, it's people falling on the floor and getting knocked out in the Holy Spirit. Sometimes it's just quietly sitting in a corner somewhere by yourself in the church. Sometimes it's shouting, sometimes it's jumping and dancing. And thank you, Lord! Yeah. Sometimes it's screaming in the middle of the church. Thank you, Lord! Amen. Sometimes it's what you didn't plan on. And that's all right. No, that's what He's planning on. We're good. We just got to learn to do that, though. Let me tell you that. That's true. This is from me. I got to learn to do that because I have preferences just like you do. And I'm not just talking about worship. I'm talking about I have preferences in the way that God does things. You're like, well, you're crazy. Why don't you say that out loud? Because I have preferences for the way God does things. And if you're the pastor and different things start happening in church, the enemy will inevitably say to you, there's a bunch of people who think you're crazy right now. There ain't nothing coming back. And I'm like, yeah, but I want God to be glorified so bad. I really do, y'all. And so I got to get out of my own space sometimes and out of my own head sometimes to allow God to do what God's going to do. And so will you, by the way. Because not only will I have to learn how to let God move in ways that I didn't expect, you have to too. You got to get out of your own head because we all have preferences. Just the way and actually even boxes for the way we want God to move within those boxes. You may not know that's true, but it's true for every single one of us. And we just got to be careful that we don't try to put God in our box. And anyway, I don't know why I said all that. Probably for me. It's probably for me, honestly. But if anybody needed to get some of that while I was talking to the Lord about it, you can have some. All right. This message I'm going to do for a few weeks in the book of James. And y'all are like, well, it must be an afterthought. Absolutely, it's actually not. I know some of y'all are going to be wanting to think about this and think, no, that's not true. That can't be true. It's can't be right. But I literally decide a year in advance kind of what I'm going to preach. You know, like, well, way to let the Holy Spirit lead you. No, that doesn't mean that the Holy Spirit doesn't change stuff all along the journey of that. But I knew that at some point this year I was going to be in the book of James. I didn't know when it was going to be, but I had written down on my notes that we were going to be in the book of James a little bit. And I kind of know now why. And the title of what we're going to do for the next few weeks is called Preparing to be Prepared. That sounds strange, but I think you've been preparing to be prepared the whole year. I don't think this is one of those years you can sit this one out. What I mean specifically by this particular 3 or 4 weeks of messages in James 1 is that I believe God has given us a vision. I think our church in general has a purpose and a vision that is broad. And on January the 9th, I want to give you a vision for the year. And I try to ask the Lord that every single year. I know we're broadly speaking, our church is a hospital on a hill. That was a prophetic word spoken to us, over us 25 years ago. And we've always been that. Most people that come here, even if you don't know that's why you came here, you come to be healed of something. It's a hospital. And I was one of those people. I didn't even know I needed to be healed. You know, Todd was hired here not knowing he needed to be healed. And I've never seen anybody's life more transformed, in 5 or 6 year window than that guy's. By the way, I've been telling him to sing a mercy song forever, and this is the second time he's sung it. So I sang it 2 or 3 months ago, and I said, man, I love this song. He goes, me too. I said, oh, you already got it on your list. He said, I said, what, y'all know it? He goes, we're learning it. I said, when are you going to sing it? He said, when I get all the way through it. So anyway, broadly speaking, we're a hospital on a hill. If you're here, you either came to be healed or you came to work on the staff in the hospital. Volunteer staff, professional staff, whatever. In hospitals, there's people over here at CMC Lincoln that have all kinds of roles. There are people that walk around the halls feeding people. There are people that walk around shining those floors, keeping it purified over there. Praise God for people like that. You know, they're probably the least noticed people over there, but every single day, 24 hours a day, there's somebody in that hospital shining floors and cleaning that building. And that's to your good if you're there, right? There are people there that are like CNAs. There are people there that are nurses. There are people there who are doctors. They're staff people. They have all kind of people that keep that hospital going every single day. And so you're either here as a patient, and some of our patients turn into staff, by the way, in our church. And that's cool because we want you to stay. But you need to know this. Once you've been healed, God will use you for healing. So broadly speaking, we're a church on the hill, but intricately, like the intricate details of that shift year to year. Like what are we specifically about? And this year was kind of about not sitting it out. I mean, like really engaging. And next year is going to be about warriors. God spoke to me in October and said, Mike, next year I'm going to raise up warriors. And I'm like, wow, cool. So we've been a whole year, really. This whole year prepared us for next year, as God always does and is. He's always about preparing, adds one thing upon another. And so this last few weeks before the new year, before January 9th, Vision Sunday, we're going to have a time of being preparing to be prepared even more. These are the things I feel like God's saying in the last hours of 2021 to prepare us for 2022 and for the outpouring. So receive these things, even if you feel like you're good and you're already there. Listen anyway, because I told somebody this morning after the first service, I went back to speak to a young lady who was just distraught over here in the side. I mean, after I got the preaching, we didn't do an altar call necessarily or anything like that. She was just weeping, and I walked back there to encourage her and hug her, and she said, "Man, I needed this today." And I said, well, "Honey, let me tell you something. I needed it too, because God speaks to me all the time. He won't let me actually preach a message to you until He preaches it to me. If He can't preach it to you, He can't preach it through you." And so this message is for me too today, and I want to encourage you. I want to be prepared to become a warrior. I'm on my way. I really believe I believe you're on your way to it. I believe you. I believe God's raising up warriors in this church. And it's you. If you're here and it's your first time here, welcome. Welcome to the club. Welcome to the training. Welcome to the army of the Lord. You're going to be a warrior. I don't want to hear nothing about I don't have confidence, I'm messed up. We all messed up. Yeah. Okay? We are all messed up. We are all a work in progress. But God's going to raise up some warriors out of the work in progress. And so, anyway, James chapter 1, verses 2 through 5 says this: "My brother, count it all joy when you fall into various trials." That's an oxymoronic sentence. I've ever heard of it. Yay, trials. But that's what he's saying. He's saying, count it all joy. You know, I'm encouraging you that this is for your good. You can't count anything a joy unless you think it's got some good in it, right? And so he's saying, listen, these trials that you're going through, I got a plan. So I need for an attitude shift to happen in the body of Christ. Because we hate trials, we hate tribulation, we hate hard spaces. But nobody gets to perfection, nobody gets to grow up until they go through trials and tribulation and pain. And you're like, there's got to be another way. And let me tell you something, if there were another way, God would have never let His Son walk through what He walked through. There's not another way. We're living in a broken, fallen world, and it's a mess. And we have two choices in this broken, fallen world. We either curl up, ball up, hide in a corner, close our eyes and hope it ends, or we stand up, get counted, join the army of the Lord and be warriors. And my choice is warrior. I've never been so excited to be alive. A couple weeks ago, and I really will get that to the verse. After I got through preaching that message 2 weeks ago about, I believe, the seeds of the last days, the Antichrist coming on the scene. I believe the seeds to that government have already been planted. I got an email from somebody a couple days later that said, I think that's just bringing fear. And I said to them, I said, whoa, time. None of that was to bring fear. And I hope I communicated that then. I'm not trying to get you to be scared. I'm not even telling you it's okay to be scared. I'm telling you that you're going to become a warrior. We're going to battle. We're getting ready to go to war. And I don't mean that in a way where we're going to judge everybody and beat everybody to death with the word. I just feel like it's time for us to stand up and be counted for the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so when I tell you practical information, it's not to scare you, it's to prepare you and to tell you that it's time. And when I tell you that God says in his word right here that you're supposed to count it all joy, there's a reason for it, all right? So count it all joy when you fall into trials of various kinds, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. And that patience have its purpose. God does trials, joy, patience, perfection. He said, because when patience has its perfect work, that you may be made perfect and complete, lacking nothing. If any of you lacks wisdom, I don't know why it's almost like a deviation here, but it's really not. I mean, he's connecting patience, growth, maturity, and wisdom. So what is, if you had to define maturity, growth, putting on your big boy pants, you would connect that to wisdom, right? So what he's doing is he's telling you a little bit of how that's to happen and actually what you're supposed to gain. So if you lack wisdom, ask God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. Ask him. He said, just ask me for it, okay? But let him ask in faith, with no doubting. For he who doubts is like a wave of the sea driven and tossed by the wind. In other words, like, I'm going to pray a prayer of faith, even before it comes out of my mouth, believing that God won't do anything about this. That's what he's saying. He's saying, listen, God, heal me. God, fix my children. God, fix my heart. Without any thought that God can do such a thing is really pointless. That's what, I'm not saying that, he's saying. He said, person that does and prays like that, he said, for let that man not suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all of his ways. And so, let's break that thing down today, because I feel like God's really saying something very specific to us about trials and tribulations and perfection and growing up in faith. And since I believe that we're being prepared to be prepared, this is something I believe you need to check off your list today. And I think what he's talking to you mainly about today is the attitude at which I approach things. All right? So let's break them down. I can have joy in the trials. Have you ever even said that to yourself? I can have joy in trials. Say it. I can have joy in trials. Wow. I mean, we've read it before, and we vaguely believe it. But what God doesn't need you vaguely believing his truth. He needs you absolutely all in 1,000%. So I'm thinking about this scripture and I'm thinking about this sentence. And last week when I had written these things down, this one verse came to my mind that you guys know well. And it's Romans 8:28. You might want to start quoting that for me. Romans 8:28. And that's exactly how I thought y'all were going to quote it, which is a misquote. It says, what was said to me right then from the audience, which is correct. It says, Romans 8:28, God works all things together for good to them who are called according to his purpose. But that's not what that verse says. We know. We always forget that part. It says, for we know that God works all. Let me tell you, and from God's perspective, that verse means exactly the same thing the way we quote it, even if we quote it wrong. Because God's perspective is, I'm going to work all things together for good. But the problem with that, with only thinking of it from God's perspective, is we never get heaven to earth. Because when it says, for we know, that's the part that attaches you to the promise. And see, what our problem is we don't know. God knows what he's supposed to do, and he's doing it well. We're supposed to know what God is doing and believe it well. And we're not. Because that is a promise. There's absolutely a promise that God is working all things together for your good. But you got to know it. You got to know that. Because it's hard to be a warrior if it's a vague promise. But when you know it, when you start knowing it, it changes everything. So let me tell you the difference in why we have a hard time grasping this scripture verse, 8:28. Write that down in your notes so you can look at it later. We live, Romans 8:28, from an earthly perspective, and God always, every single promise he makes is from an eternal perspective. We see it from this side looking that way. He sees it from this side looking that way. See, what God's doing is he's saying, listen, no pain, no disease, no COVID, no death. Let me read you a quote that I got from David Jeremiah when he was teaching through this last week. When I was praying about this verse, flipped on the radio, coming back from Linda to Tom's graveside, and David Jeremiah is preaching on the verse and here's what he says about the promise of Romans 8:28. Everything we face in life falls under the umbrella of the promise that I will do all things for your good. You understand that, okay? No storm, no pain, no sickness, not even death. Not even the demons in hell can keep God from bringing good from your storms. That is amazing. Not even the demons in hell can stop God from keeping a promise. See, amen? He says this, goes on to say this. That doesn't mean that pain is good. In fact, it is often evil. But God will still work for my favor. See, Paul's not saying that pain is good. Paul's saying that God is good. And see, until we get to the perspective where we can tap into his eternal view of things. And this is why your ears should have been burning, Miss Gilda, after first service. I don't know of anybody that has been a more beautiful picture of what I'm preaching right now than you this past year. I really don't. I mean, her husband, for you guys that knew, passed away, went on to glory. And they were one of those couples. I'm trying not to look too much out there. They're one of them couples that if you're around them for a little while, you either love them or they get on your nerves. And I'll tell you why. It's because they've been married almost 50 years, and they still held hands and stuff. They still adored one another. You ask either of them, and they would say, he's my best friend. She's my best friend. When she talks about John now, who's in heaven, her eyes light up. As if she's seeing that good-looking guy that played football at Appalachian State when he was 19 years old. Her eyes light up. And that's what I'm trying. I told y'all that, so I can tell you this. That we grieve. We talk every week and grieve. We cry together on the phone. I lost count of how many times we cried together on the phone, and in person. But God has given that lady a picture of this from his perspective that I really try to tap into when I'm around you. Because even that kind of hurt, God is using for her good. And it don't feel good. It doesn't feel good at all on this side. But I have a holy confidence that even losing my brother, God will use for my good. Why? Because he said he would. He said he would. See, the enemy thinks he can take people from us or bring about tragedy in our life, losing our job or broken relationship. And he's only looking from his perspective to do damage to us and hurt to us. But what I'm trying to report to you today is that I don't care. Not a demon in hell can keep you from being blessed. Not a demon in hell can keep God from bringing good on your church. So I don't know what you've been through. I do know this. I've never met anybody in my whole life. I've said this about 1,000 times here. I've never met anybody in my whole life that was deep in Christ that hadn't been through trial.
Right.
And I'm not telling you to look for them because they'll find you. It doesn't matter if you're saved or lost. It doesn't matter if you rich or poor. It doesn't matter if you're black or white. It doesn't matter if you live in a nice neighborhood or a bad neighborhood. It doesn't matter what kind of car you drive or if you drive a car. Trauma hits and hurts. But the difference is I gotta know. The promise of God is this, for me, His Son, that all things will work together for my good. And knowing that by faith transitions me to the place where I can endure trials and walk in joy in the middle of them. And I'm telling y'all this. Why am I telling y'all this? Why am I telling you this? It's because the warriors that God's wanting to raise up cannot be people who every time they run up on something hard and hit a wall, they can collapse, fall down, quit. Warriors can't be quitters. Did y'all hear me? Warriors cannot be quitters. Doesn't mean you don't grieve and cry and have pain and anguish in your soul. It just means that you don't stop at the thing that brought anguish to your soul and build an altar at it. There are people in the church that lost people or lost things or had traumatic things done to them or said to them when they were younger that have never moved beyond that. I'm not judging those people. I'm telling you, here's the deal. I tell people all the time. I usually tell them at the funeral home or in the hospital room or whenever. I even mentioned it to Miss Guild. I was standing over her shoulder when they were taking the tubes out of my brother. And I said, we'll either run to him or from him. And she said, we're running to him. We'll either run to him or from him. Let's run to him. Because there are people who are paralyzed with things that happened in their life. And I'm not telling you not to grieve. I think grief is one of the greatest gifts God ever gave us. That's the honest truth. I know that crying is a gift from God. I know that it is. But if you go to the thing, the traumatic thing, and you stop and you move in at the trauma, you'll never get to the joy. You'll never get to the joy. And there are people that have built monuments to the hurt in their life and just can't get beyond it. And God, listen to me, children of God, God did not design you or cause you to be reborn so that you could stay traumatized in trauma. He raised you up and He says you are a royal priesthood. You are a holy nation. You have been called out of darkness and trauma. And I'm fine with you grieving that moment, God says. But don't stay in that moment. Let me show you the good I'm going to bring from that moment. If you stay in a moment, in the place of grief and destruction, you will never get to the good He promised for you. And you won't be a warrior if you moved in with trauma. John 5, one of the most amazing scriptures I've ever read. Jesus walks up to a guy who's been crippled for 38 years and He says, do you want to be well? The most foolish question I ever read in scriptures. You're crippled and you're laying by a pool that you got to trust people to bring you food 3 times a day. You got to hope somebody drags you out of the rain when it's raining because you can't walk. And Jesus walks up to him and says, do you want to get well? And I dropped my Bible. I said, what? What? Do you want to get well? Yeah, I want to get well. Well, undoubtedly, the question needed to be answered. Or He wouldn't have asked it. Got me thinking. There are people who are closer friends with trauma. They identify with trauma and what happened to them more than they identify with what happened for them. And God said, listen, don't stay there. We'll grieve together. God counts. The Bible says in Psalms, He counts your tears. Man, can you imagine the attentiveness of God that He would count your tears over any issue? Even if God thinks you ought not to be crying about it, He counts your tears. That's deep love right there. That's somebody laying over you while your head's on your pillow going, 12, 13. I love you, 17, 18. I love you, 25, 26, 27. 30 tears. And He's crying with you. That's deep love, y'all. That's the kind of love that gives life for you. But you got to choose. See, Romans 8:28 means everything to God if you pick it up where His name is, but it means everything to you if you pick it up at the beginning of the verse. For we know. For we know. For we know. You got to know it. How can I know it? Because He said it. If He said it, it is. Keeps all His promises. Every promise is a yes and amen. I will make good out of your back. I promise. Once you learn to walk in the joys of your trials, the testing of that moment brings you to patience. Let me tell you what I thought patience was me being nice to that person that went around the loop when I was at McDonald's and went in the right-hand side when I was waiting on the third car. I thought patience was me not blowing a horn. Let me tell you what I've learned. Me having that covenant thing on the back of my car has helped. I'll be wanting to go like, sometimes I just want to drive y'all's car around. Can I drive somebody's car around? No, seriously, I thought patience was when I was doing good with like, they just passed me. I'm good with that. God bless them. Come to find out, here's what patience really means. The ability, listen to me now, the ability, this is a scriptural definition of it, and probably Webster too. The ability to accept or tolerate trouble, delay, or suffering. The ability to accept or tolerate trouble, delay, or suffering. So what's He doing? He's testing me to bring me to the place where I come to the position where I have the ability to tolerate or accept delay, trouble, or suffering. Why don't I want to do that? Point number 3. Because patience, when you come to an understanding of that in your spirit, leads you to perfection. Does that mean perfection like God perfection? Jesus perfection? No. That's not what He's talking about. This word is defined as to spiritual maturity, to growth, to wisdom. You want to be big in God? Let me tell you something. He can't make a warrior out of an infant. He can't make a warrior out of an infant. Some of y'all been growing like crazy. April, I sit there, she's like, why are you talking to me? I'm just sitting there on a second. I watched it happening. Hadn't you, bro? And your wife, you told me this a couple weeks ago. God is growing that girl up. I'm so excited for her. I'm watching it happen right before my eyes. There's a lot of you guys that have that testimony right now. He's growing me up, y'all. He's growing me up. I feel it. Some of that comes through hurt, isn't it, April? Some of that comes through pain. Yeah. Hold to the promise. Because the point is, God growing you up so He can trust you. And what He's really saying, I need an attitude change in y'all that are not growing up. Because if you have an attitude change, what's 2 Corinthians 10 say? Listen, I have the ability in Christ Jesus to take every thought captive and make that thought obedient unto Christ. Right? You know what Paul's talking about in that verse, that chapter 10? He's talking about how you're going to be sustained and how when strongholds come against you, high arguments, when the enemy comes with spiritual arguments from heavenly places to attack your faith and tell you you're not, for you to acknowledge that God says I am. And when the enemy comes like that, I can take the thoughts of the enemy and I can say, I will hold you captive and I will choke you out. I'm going to take you captive, because you take something captive, it's not nice. I'm going to take you captive And I'm going to make those thoughts obedient to the word of the Lord and what he thinks over me. And so you got to change your mind. You got to change your attitude. Some of us aren't growing because we have bad attitudes. Some of us aren't growing because we search around the church finding what's wrong instead of what's right. We search around everybody we know finding what's wrong instead of what's right. And I'm just telling you, get over it. Get past it. It's back to preference sometimes. Move on. Move on from your preference and just be a worshiper. Grow up. Be mature in him. You want to be a warrior? Do y'all want to be, seriously, do you want to be a warrior? Yes. Then respond accordingly. Start taking thoughts captive. Start believing that all things work together for my good. Quit living at the altar of your defeat. And come and bow at the cross of your victory. Amen. And all of it is summed up and comes together in number 4. Whatever you do, don't waver. Whatever you do, don't waver. Stand with me. I want you to go back just for a second to the second part of that verse, and I'm going to read that over to you guys, and then we're going to get out of here. He's like, oh, great. I just cut it off. Maybe. Not that one. The Bible verse. Yeah, there you go. I'm sorry, buddy. I put those guys through the ringer. Oh, yeah. But hey, go back one more page. I'm going to look at something else first. Verse 5. If any of you, I'm going to speak this over you. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives to all literally and without reproach, and it will be given to you. All right, now go to the next one. Thank you. But let him who asks, ask in faith, with no doubt, for he who doubts is like a wave of the sea driven and tossed by the wind. See, every bit of this comes together. Point number 1, 2, 3. It comes together under the covering of confidence in what you've not yet seen. The Bible says that faith is that. It's not what you already have encountered. It's not even what you've already seen God do. Because once you've seen God do something, you're not only living in faith in that area of your life, you're living in fact in that area of your life. But what hadn't yet happened for you, or what you've not yet seen, is still faith to you. And God is saying, listen, I want you to reach into your spirit, man. Change your attitude of what you believe about me. Change your attitude about what you believe about others. And I want you to begin to walk in a life where you have a hope and a faith that is beyond what you can see. Because your ability to walk in joy within trials is connected to the level of your faith. Your ability to develop patience is connected to the level of your faith. The ability to be made whole through patience and to turn into perfection is directly equivalent to the level of your faith. See, what I'm asking you to do is jump past our earthly perspective into his perspective and say, I believe that God has an eternal view of everything that's going on in my life. And his plan is for good, not bad. It's for hope, not hopelessness. I have a plan to prosper you, to give you a hope and joy and dream and vision and meaning. And the enemy knows that if you ever find your identity in God, he has spent his whole entire existence, especially since your birth and beyond, trying to keep you from knowing why you were born and who you were reborn to. He tries to hide you in the identity of who you used to be all the time. He spends countless hours speaking over you who you were. You're a failure. You're a loser. You've been abused. You've been divorced. You had an abortion. You did drugs. You have a tattoo on your ankle. Whatever. You know how the devil does? And he just beats you to death with who the enemy says you are. And his whole goal with that is for you to never learn who God says you are. Because if you ever find out who he says you are, Come hell or high water, you're a warrior. Once you find out who He says you are, once you find your identity in Him. See, I tell people all the time that their identity is messed up. They don't have a clue who they are. But once I see that light come on, oh my God, I'm His. I'm His. I'm His. He thinks I'm good. He loves how He made me. He loves my height. He loves my bald head. He loves me. He loves me. He loves me. Well, I can have faith that somebody I believe loves me. You see how your identity is connected to your faith walk? You think you had to get faith before you get identity. Here's the truth. You got to get identity in Him before you can have faith. Because if you think God's bad or mean or after you, it's hard to have faith and confidence in who He is and what He says He'll do. Once you get a revelation of His goodness, what He thinks about me, you will run to His love. Because the government is resting on His shoulders, and I am too. Amen. Isn't that good? So here's the deal. My God, oh God, I love you so much. You're an amazing dad. And I can't believe you love me like you do. And I know that love changes me. It makes me somebody else. But I can't be somebody else until I fall in love with you. Can't be healed. So change my mindset. Let me get a revelation today of my identity in you, and it will change my approach to you. My faith will grow. My faith will grow. I start believing that good's coming from all things. I start believing that your patience is being perfected in me so that I might be perfected in you. Do it, Lord. Do it in our church. I believe with everything in me, you are raising up warriors. You are raising up warriors. You are raising up warriors. Connect our faith and identity and cause a collision to happen right now so that we know who we are in you. So that we know who we are in you. And I speak over our church today. Grace and mercy and maturity. Change our attitudes, make them like yours. Make us like you. Take us in deep. Because I believe you're going to make warriors out of this group of people. It's in your holy, precious, mighty, glorious, miraculous name that we pray. And everybody said, amen. Amen. Thank you guys. I love y'all.